The other key takeaway will be give you some solid examples as where you can kind of realize some significant savings within your invoice processing. So to get us started with this, I think the first question will be, how would I know how well I'm doing with my invoice processing today? So AP department, like all other departments, it's good to compare yourself with your peers and see what other people are doing in your industries and kind of learn from some of the good success stories and case studies that were done. So one of the things that we're going to be sharing with you today are key measurements to measure how efficient you are with your invoice processing, and we'll share with you also studies that show how the top 20% are doing compared to what's the average in the industry and compared to the laggers within these processes. I think this will be good information that each of you can then take, compare it to how you're doing today with your process, and kind of uncover areas where you can improve and you can build on. So let's look at some of these key measures. Obvious thing, if you're not measuring it today, it's hard to improve it. So the first step in improving your current process is you really got to agree on some key parameters that you would use to kind of assess how well you're doing with your invoices. So the two most common parameters will be the cost per invoice and the approval cycle. How long does it take from the time you receive an invoice till the time you put it through the payment process and you approve it? Both of these have a significant impact on your business. The cost of invoice, you will see in some of the studies that we're going to share with you, there is a huge discrepancy between people that are implementing technologies to automate that process versus people that are doing it the manual way. The approval cycle is critical because it has a lot to do with visibility and the ability to take advantage of things like early payments or avoid late payments. So if it's taking you 30 or 40 days to go through the approval process, you might be missing out on a lot of opportunities in regard to early payments or getting hit with some late payments. So the faster you can put that invoice through the process and how visible it is to all the stakeholders, the better it's going to be to take advantage of some of these benefits and values. So next, I'm going to just take a quick minute and look at a study that was done by the Aberdeen Group. This was done back in 2007, and in it they interviewed 400 companies. These companies varied in size from companies with 100 employees to companies with 5,000 plus employees. They also spanned a number of different industries, and I think you'll find it very interesting kind of how much discrepancy there is between the top 20% and bottom 30%. You can see from the slide, the top 20%, their estimate was that the cost per invoice was just a little bit over $2 per invoice. If you go to the average, which is the middle 50%, they average about $9, a little bit over $9 per invoice. And then the bottom 30% and went as high as $34. And in the study, we've seen people with about $50 or $60 per invoice. These numbers sound just astonishing, especially when you start doing some simple math. How many invoices are you processing in a given month, and how much savings there is if you're deploying the right technologies and if you're moving your process to the most optimum and most efficient way. Same level of discrepancy you can see on the number of days it takes to approve an invoice. With the top-in class, it's taking less than 3 days for the invoice from the time it hit their doors till the time it's ready for payments. Whether they pay it right then and there or delayed for another 30 days, that's up to them. But the key here is everyone has visibility to the invoice, and you can make more of a financial decision. Does it make any sense to pay this early and take advantage of some payments, or should I stretch the terms of that invoice and just work my cash flow? That's completely up to you. The key with the system is the faster and the better visibility you have to that process, the more in control and the better decisions you're going to be making in regard to when to pay it and how to pay it. So one of the key takeaways out of today's session is to really just shed some light on what's out there, what other companies are doing, and share with you some best practices, and really hope that you can take some of this information and go back to your own process and start comparing it and kind of exploring areas where you can improve. The second half of the presentation, Jeff will walk us through some detailed analysis in regard to what's the traditional process, some of the pain associated with it, and some of the consequences with some of these manual process and paper-intensive processes. And then we'll share with us kind of a vision of what an optimum solution would look like and really give us kind of a roadmap as how we can kind of go about this. Before I hand this off to Jeff, I just want to kind of leave you with some key areas that I think worth exploring rather than trying to take this whole invoice processing all at once. I think it makes it a lot more efficient to pick your battles and kind of pick the areas where there might be the biggest return and take these in a more phased approach. So the way we like to look at this is you can look at this in kind of three phases. Phase one, dealing just with the paper, and that typically deals with the receipt of these invoices, the archiving of these invoices, just the inbound invoices, how you receive them and how you file them. That's kind of step one. Step two deals with the routing and approval and how you can kind of put this through your system in an efficient and fashion and kind of get it through the system as fast as possible and as accurately as possible. And then the third element deal with integration with the ERP system. So I'm just going to take a few seconds and touch on each one of these real quick. Reducing paper. Hopefully not many of you are kind of resembling this picture here, but if you're still dealing with temporary files and manual paper files that are moving from one desk to another, there got to be a better way. That would be my first priority, to kind of look at that process and start looking at ways to improve it. Depending on the number of invoices that you're processing and depending on whether everything is taking place in one location or you have multiple locations, the complexity of the solution might vary. But at a minimum, you should try to get away from paper. We have seen different variations where people just do simple things like just scan in the invoices as they come in, or if they're emailed, they're saving it on the network folder. That's definitely not the end solution, but that's a good starting point in the right direction, which is converting these paper invoices as fast as possible to electronic and eliminating the need for that movement of that physical piece of paper. So that's one definite area of improvement that you got to explore and you got to kind of spend time on. Once you've moved these paper invoices to electronic, then the next thing is to look at your routing and approval process. How are these invoices going through the system for approval? And again, if you have remote locations, that typically would magnify the issue. We've had customers, and I think Jeff will share with you some specifics and some examples on that, but we've had customers where every week they would be shipping like a box of paper to their corporate office just for processing. With today's technologies and all the different elements available with the internet and web access, there is no reason to kind of incur all the cost and inefficiencies that deal with moving the paper around for approval. We have seen simple solutions like people just leveraging their email to route that invoice for approval, but there's definitely a lot of area for improvement on that routing and approval process. It goes all the way to more easy to use graphical kind of tools to allow you to design a process and design a flow, and as soon as an invoice comes in, it right away gets inserted in one of these approval processes. All the right people are notified electronically. They can take actions on it electronically, and it just flows through the system within hours rather than days. So that's another area of opportunity that you should explore. And then the third one is just integrating it with your current system. Each of you got your own accounting systems. We all use day-to-day tools like emails and other things. It's critical for whatever solution that you look at to integrate nicely with your current system. That does not have to be part of phase one of the solution, but it should be part of your roadmap and the things that you should consider when you're looking at different solutions. What I mean by integration to your system, it really has two sides to it. One, integration on the front end. When you're getting all these invoices in, there are solutions out there that can simply allow you to scan in these invoices, get all the data that you need out of them, whether it's header information or line item details, and automatically integrate all this information right into your system, eliminating any data entry and eliminating any keystrokes. So that's really the ultimate or the optimum solution. And it's not for everyone. It all depends on how many people you're using and how many resources you have today that are keying in invoices into your system. If you have 2 or 3 people doing it, then there might be a big opportunity for improvement here by automating some of these technologies to integrate right into your system. So that's one side of it on the front end. The other side is, now that all these invoices are in the system, how easy is it to look it up and retrieve these documents? And that's where there are tools that just really sits right within your accounting system or integrate right with your email system. So when you need to look up an invoice, you don't need to leave what you're doing and kind of go open another system to find it. With a couple of clicks, you should be able to see the invoice, even the payment, the receiving documents, all right within your accounting system. So it's critical to kind of try to look for ways to integrate that new process into your existing system. So this is just kind of a quick introduction showing you some of the best practices out there and some of the key areas for improvement that we recommend that you explore and look at related to how can I reduce paper, how can I automate the routing and approval of the invoice, and how can I integrate the whole process with my existing system. Next, I'm going to hand this off to Jeff, who's going to take us kind of in a quick journey with the invoice, and will walk us through this roadmap and kind of show us the traditional process, the new process, and highlight some of the key pitfalls with the traditional process and also some of the benefits of the new process. Jeff?
Great. Thanks, Sam. Let me grab some control here. Okay. In this roadmap, we will talk about the traditional invoice process that companies typically go through. Now, for you accounting folks out there, I know you understand this process, but what we're going to do today is just get a neutral ground of where we are starting so we can grasp some of those mistakes being made. Secondly, we're going to talk about some of the common pitfalls of the processing in an invoice. There are really 2 key issues that we see across companies. Now, there's obviously more, but for today's purpose, let's just talk about those 2 key issues. Then we're going to talk about the benefits of improving this process as it relates to productivity, risk mitigation, and paper reduction. And then we're going to talk to the solution overview. We'll dive into some details on some of the ways you can phase this into your invoice process to maximize your return on your investment. Lastly, we'll give away, we have a free giveaway, and it's really going to be helpful for you guys and beneficial and something you should take advantage of. So let's go ahead and get started here. Okay. So this is a slide of a traditional invoice process, and highlighted in shades of red are some of the bottlenecks. Now, I was going to walk you through this process, but I don't think I have the breath or the time to go ahead and do that. So what I want to do is just kind of highlight some of these bottlenecks. For example, many copies are being made throughout this process, and the reason why is, you know, it comes to the AP department, these invoices, and then they have to move it to department heads to get approval and get matched, and they don't want to lose that document. It's a critical document, one of your important assets. And what they do is make copies, and not only does AP make copies, but department heads make copies, purchasing makes a copy, because they're preventing a situation where they can't find this invoice. So there are many copies being made. How many times do you make copies? That's a question maybe you want to ask yourself. Another big pivotal point is just the process in general. You're looking at manually approving these documents, or you're looking at manually matching these documents, and that's a process in itself. You can see the red little circles there with the cross. Those are temporary folders that companies create so that they can keep track of pending receipts of goods, pending invoices, pending purchase orders, do their matching. If it doesn't match, they have to contact the vendor. So there's a lot going on here that can be improved upon. So what we want to do today is kind of dig into detail on some statistics of what happens when you have a process like this. So let's go ahead and move forward. And at this point in time, before we get into the challenges, I want to ask a polling question. And what I want to do is see if any of your difficulties in your process match what the typical process problems are. So which best describes your difficulty with your invoice process? Go ahead, and this is interactive, so go ahead and feel free to answer these questions. Is it too paper intensive? Is it a manual approval process? Is that what's bogging you down? Is it dealing with audits and compliance challenges on the back end? Many folks think once the invoice is paid that the process is over. Well, there's audits, there's compliances you have to deal with. You have to maintain these records and keep these, and if they're not kept, the government might come after you. So, and then lastly, the length of invoice cycle time. So go ahead, take a few more seconds to take a look at these. Go ahead and select which one you think applies to your process. Okay, just a few more seconds. Okay, most of you have answered, so I'll go ahead and close the poll. And what I'll do is share the results with you. So it looks like most of you are still dealing with the paper, which is okay. That's common. That's something that companies deal with today. And what you want to do is, again, look at this in phases. And if you're just looking to eliminate some of that paper, first start out with just archiving, and we'll show you how you can do that today. And that would be your first step. So let's go ahead and hide these results and move forward back to the PowerPoint. So what are some of the common pitfalls? Well, they can really fall under two key areas. Now, the two key common pitfalls are a paper-based system and a manual process. Those were our top two that you in the audience selected as issues with your current process. So those are two great topics to talk about today. Now, paper-based system and a manual process, they slow down the way things work, and you are susceptible to mistakes within these processes. Now, what are the problems here with the paper-based process? Let's talk about that one first. Just give me 1 second. Looking for my slide to change here. Okay. Okay, problems with the paper-based process. All right, I want to share with you some statistics that highlight some of these issues with processing your invoices via paper. All right, companies spend an average of $25,000 to fill a typical 4-drawer filing cabinet, and then $2,000 to maintain it. These are done by third-party research groups. And I know this first statistic is quite shocking, but believe me, when I first saw this, I thought the same thing. But imagine all the files that you're keeping manually and storing in there and misfiling perhaps, and that's what they're really taking into account and having to recreate it. On the average, a document costs $34 to recreate. So when they average that in with a typical 4-drawer filing cabinet, it can cost you $25,000. So just keep that in mind. Secondly, on average, a transactional document, invoice, any other document perhaps, is copied 19 times. 19 times. So again, we kind of shared this in the bottleneck slide, but the lack of visibility, you're not able to see where the invoice is, so copies are being made beforehand in the departments so they can track their own work. Well, once all these copies are being made, maybe one is signed, another one is signed as well, so you're duplicating efforts. You have more than one copy out there that's being approved or matched, so it just really complicates and convolutes the entire process and duplicates your efforts. So what are the consequences? Well, remember from our slide, there are several physical temporary folders around the office waiting with multiple copies being made at different steps throughout that process. What happens is organizations are unable to find an invoice and at any given time, and they can't really track it. And so in this paper process, we lose trackability and accountability. Also, the increase of cost. Sam mentioned earlier how some companies have that distributed environment where they're bringing in the invoices at different locations. Then they have a central AP department where they're actually taking these documents in, and they're using couriers to do that, like FedEx, UPS. Hundreds of dollars are being spent a month on just getting the invoices to the appropriate location. So there's definitely a way you can reduce costs within the paper-based process. And then risk vulnerability, just disaster recovery initiatives. There's also the audit and compliance issues that the consequences of dealing with a paper-based system are you're really solely relying on that piece of paper to be your evidence in these types of situations. So want to try to move away from that, and that's the goal today. So let's talk about the manual process. Some more statistics here, just to let everybody know, share with you guys. More manual intervention, the more chance of errors. That's what it comes down to. 1 out of every 40 keystrokes is an error. So when you key in information into your accounting system, 1 out of 40 keystrokes is an error. 15% of all paper handled is lost. And then 15 to 30% of employees spend their time spent searching for information. So this is just good information to know about the problems with having a manual process, and the consequences are it's just a lack of productivity and also high error rates. So there's errors within the process. There's people aren't being productive. They're looking for documents. They're manually creating documents. So it can be a costly process, and we've actually seen some customers duplicate invoice payments. So that tends to happen every now and again. So just want to highlight again some of these issues that companies are having. So let's talk about the benefits. The benefits of improving this process as it relates to productivity and then paper. Remember the 3 slides that Sam showed you were reducing paper, automating that approval process, and then integrating into your accounting system. What happens when you reduce the paper? You centralize all the documents into one location. So now one document resides in one location. Everyone has access to it. Even if you're in one office today, you're pushing paper around to desktop, to desktop, to desktop. Well, if you put it into one location, you know where that document's at, you know who's responsible for it, and you can find it instantly. So that's really the big benefit of going to a paperless system. You just improve your productivity and visibility. And then also the automated approval. I mean, huge reduction in just late fees. And then you can enable some of those discounts. If you can automate that process, then there's ways you can take advantage of some discounts from vendors, or even just eliminate the late fees again. So, and one of the big things is accountability. Now you send that to a department head and they need to approve that. Well, instead of getting misfiled or put into a pile on their desk and they never get to it, and then all of a sudden you're running around trying to find it because it needs to go out with the next check run, what you can do here is you can look at the document and say, all right, so-and-so hasn't approved this yet. I know where it's at in the process, so you can track it and be accountable for what it is. And then last is integration. This really depends on your system, and we can help you analyze your process today. But if you're doing a lot of keystrokes and entering a lot of information and your volume is high, you want to be able to integrate some of that into your system so that you take information from the invoice, and that's it. You don't have to key it in. It's taking it right from the invoice and putting it in the system. So very, very good ways how you can eliminate some of those mistakes. And with that said, just want to share a quick example. One of our customers had a problem with archiving their documents, just archiving, that was it. The process in general was pretty intensive, where they had to take these documents out to an offsite location and file these away. So that in itself was a difficult issue. But more importantly, they were encountering long and expensive audits because of the end of the years when they needed to go through their audits. And then they literally needed to jump in that car, in the picture perhaps, wait in traffic, get to their offsite location, and dig through all their papers to find one invoice. So this was just taking way too long. I believe their audit took 2 months. 2 months to get this done. And then the dollars they spend on that audit were tremendous. So what they did is, the success was they implemented our archive solution so that next time they were audited, they let the auditors have at it electronically, so they could look for all the documents, retrieve invoices instantly just by archiving the invoices. So they were able to reduce their audit by 2/3 with this type of solution, and that saved them $1,000 in the process. I mean, there's a lot of other benefits there where they were able to automate filing and not have to deal with a naming convention, and everything goes under the vendor folder once the document's processed, no problem. But at the end of the day, they didn't have to go to an offsite location to search for it. So just an example of just how you get your documents electronic can save you some time and money. So let's talk about the solution. Let's kind of share with you the solution overview. Okay, so everyone remembers this slide, the bottlenecks and all this information and all these steps. I think there's 16 steps on this slide. Well, here's ideally where you want to be. Now, this is all the phases implemented. You would take your invoices. You'd scan them in whatever way they would come in. You would scan those invoices in. You then put them in a system so they can automatically capture that information, archive the documents by vendor name or however your company does it. It's very configurable to your organization, and then approve those documents, put it through automated approval, and at the end of all the process, then enter that information in the accounting system automatically. So this is kind of a utopia of what you're trying to accomplish in your invoice process. Now, again, we can take a look at doing this in phases, and that's what is recommended, but this is a high level what you want to do. So let's take a look at that first step. Invoices come in from all different vendors. Here's an example. You have vendor 1, vendor 2, vendor 3. Different looks and feel to the invoices. We want to somehow get that information in. Well, with a forms recognition tool, you can scan those in, get them into your system, and then they'll automatically be filed, just like that. So once you have a tool like this, everything starts paperless. So right now it starts with paper and finishes with paper. If you can get that first point, whether it's at a distributed environment or centralized AP location, and scan those documents in, recognize that information, take information off those invoices, put it into a central location, and automatically file it for you. That's what this is showing. Next is the automated process. Once they're in, now you can automate that process. This is an example of how you can set up a easy one-time setup for approvals, so you can configure this to your organization and then move from there. And once this is set up, the document will kick off automatically. That's what you're looking for. You want it just, okay, this is from vendor so-and-so. It kicks off into an approval process based on the information from the vendor, and then from there it goes through your steps and is completed. So this is going to give you trackability, audit logs, accountability for everything, and it's going to be automatic. So this is phase 2 of something and it could be phase 1 depending on where your pain point is. And lastly, integrated search for accounting. So imagine your accounting software. Now you get an inquiry from one of your vendors, or there's an audit going on and you need to look up a document. Right from your accounting system, you want a tool that can look up the invoice. So you can go ahead and highlight that invoice number to a quick right click and get to your information instantly. So again, these are ways you can reduce time, improve productivity, and reduce costs within this process. And there's all 3 different phases that can be modular and put into one component to make your process more efficient. So at this point, Sam, I think we'll bring it back to kind of a wrap up here. We want to talk about some questions and answers if they're out there. So if you have any questions or need any more information, go ahead and ask away at this point.
This was great, Jeff. Thank you very much. I mean, I think we covered a lot of information here, and there's a lot of good information here that we hope was beneficial and kind of covered the materials at the right level for everyone. If you guys can just type any questions you might have in the question panel. We have a few questions here that were submitted during the presentation that we'll get started with them, and then we'll do a wrap-up at the end. So the first question I have is coming from Mark, and it's it's related to, the question is how long would it take to deploy a solution like this? And it really all depends, Mark, in kind of the phases and kind of the key functions that need to be addressed. So these solutions can be deployed in weeks, not months. It all depends on the scope of the deployment. And the technology have come a long way from the old days where the scanners used to cost a lot of dollars, and also the technology have come a long way that you can now get a very affordable, intelligent scanning solution that would do everything that Jeff was talking about, and show a very quick and direct ROI. So we're not talking about huge projects here with a very big investment on the front end. And that's where the phased approach really comes to play very nicely. Great question.
Another question we have here, Sam, is just, and this is kind of just a wrap-up question, but what will the slides in today's presentation be available so you can share with others in the department? And that's a great question, and we can make these available to you after on an offline basis. We have your information, and we can go ahead and send this out so you can, again, share this with people in your department. That's kind of what the intention is. So, yes, we can do that.
Great, and I have another question here. That someone was hoping to see an actual product demo, and that's something definitely we can set up and do easily. This was kind of intended more as an educational webinar to kind of help people just understand the challenges and understand some of the best practices. But for we just didn't feel like it would be appropriate to kind of do a product demo during a webinar like this. But we'll be happy to do that if you can just send us an email, or at the end of the webinar there is a survey. We'll be happy to kind of touch base and kind of do a brief product demo, or kind of tailor it to what you're looking for.
Okay, another question here is, do most companies scan internally or outsource? Very good question, because this can be done both ways. It really depends on your environment and how it is working today. If you have a distributed environment with many locations, maybe we can take a look at setting up scanning at different locations, or we can do it at a central location. And then if I look at the question again, you're asking if people do it internally or they outsource it to a different company. What we would recommend is something of an internal environment, so you can go ahead and handle the scanning yourself, because you want to be responsible for what's coming into your organization. So what we could do is in a needs analysis. This is a great way to approach your needs analysis, understand the process, and we can help you out there.
Yeah, and just to add to that point, Jeff, is again, with some of the technologies out there, the scanning is becoming less and less time-consuming, and that kind of works more in favor of bringing some of these things in-house rather than outsourcing it. So like what Jeff shared with you, there are technologies now where you can just put 1,000 invoice right in the scanner, and the scanner will scan them in, will recognize which of these invoices belong to which vendor, recognize which ones are single page, which ones are multi-page, extract the indices. So that's all automated. So that really shift the burden and kind of make it a lot less labor intensive and much more doable in-house rather than having to outsource it. One more question I have here in regard to the scanners, the speed of the scanners. Again, the hardware has come a long way. These scanners now, you can get for like less than $1,000 a scanner that does 30 page or 60 page per minute. So and on the high end there are scanners that do 200 pages per minute. So it all depends on your volume and whether you have kind of a centralized processing or distributed processing where you need to put mid-sized scanners in multiple locations, or one centralized scanners to kind of put everything through. But they range in speed from as low as 30 pages per minute up to 200 pages per minute.
Okay, so we have a few more questions, and I think there's 3 or 4 here that are really targeting the integration with the ERP system or the accounting system. So Sam, I don't know if you want to go ahead and field that one. There's one is a question about any existing accounting system. Another's HT and SAP. So do you want to go ahead and take that? Go ahead.
Yeah, again, when you're talking about integration, there are 2 sides to it. One, on the front end, like as we're scanning in these documents and the ability to capture line item details or even just header information and populating the ERP system with this information, eliminating the data entry. So that's one side of it. And that can be integrated. Our solution specifically can pretty much integrate with any of these ERP packages. What we do is everything that we're scanning from the invoice is sitting in a database, and it's just a very simple process to kind of feed this information right into the proper tables within SAP, HTE, JD Edwards, or any other ERP system. We would need to just work with you or someone on your side just to kind of figure out that last integration piece, but it's not. It's a very doable task that we would just need to look at the specific ERP system. So that's on the front end. On the back end and the screen that Jeff showed, where you can retrieve copies of the invoices right from within your screen of the HTE system or the SAP system, that doesn't really require any programming. That's one of the options within our system, and it doesn't require any custom programming. It's a tool that just simply sits on the top of your application, and with like a simple hotkey would allow you to invoke like a search option without leaving SAP or HTE. So, and that's something we can show like in a demo or kind of give you more details on as needed.
Well, and to lead into the next question is, can we see a demo? I think there's 3 or 4 questions here about demos and personalized demos, and it's a great question, and I think that's really the point. We wanted to create awareness of the invoice process, some of the difficulties, and some of the ways you can improve it, and then the next step is personalize a demo to fit your environment. So we could set something up with the needs analysis outline that we can do and really help you understand your environment, and then from there go through a demo that's tailored to what you are looking to accomplish.
Great. And we have a few more questions, but just for the time, Jeff, I think we'll respond to these via email. We kind of exceed a little bit the time that we allocated. So I just want to wrap up here. We really appreciate you guys kind of took the time and sat through that webinar. I think where we leave you here is there are a couple of key questions here. One, I want to bring us back to that first slide that we look, or the kind of towards the first portion of the presentation. Key question that I think each of you should go back to your kind of office and kind of look at is like, how much is it costing me per invoice, and how long is it taking me to process an invoice? Is it costing us $2 or close to $35? And that would really show where the big discrepancy, where the savings can be. We will be happy to partner with you on this project. We actually have one of the giveaway we're doing today is at the end of the webinar, there's a 3-question survey or a 4-question survey that if you guys can fill out, and anyone that's interested in a free analysis that will be done by ACOM. We have one of our document management people will spend about half an hour, 45 minutes with you analyzing some of the key areas related to the invoice, and we'll come back to you with a detailed analysis about opportunities for improvement. This is just a good exercise just to assess where you are today and where are some of the areas of improvement. And that would be a good first step to kind of analyze your existing process, and then from there you can kind of decide, oh, there's definitely enough here to kind of move this forward and kind of look at a demo or look at it further. But I hope that we were able to get across today is this is not a project that should go to the bottom of the list. There's significant savings, and there's a great business driver here to take a project like this and start looking at how much is a true cost of processing an inbound invoices, and what are the missing opportunities if this invoice takes 30 days or 40 days to get approved, versus if we can open the visibility, allow everyone to see it, put it through the system in a couple of days, and reduce your cost closer to the $2, kind of put you in that best-in-class top 20% of the marketplace. There is significant savings, and there's enough business case here to make this a priority project. So we hope that we shed some light on some of these areas and got you excited about a project like this to kind of go back and look and at least take the first step in assessing where you are with your invoice processing today. And then we just want to thank every one of you for taking the time today, and look forward to kind of your surveys and your follow-up inquiries or questions. Thank you very much, everyone.